Welcome. I'm Daniel, and today I'd like to begin a multi-part series wherein I talk about life. Specifically today, in the first part, I'd like to talk about what is a living being. What is the difference between those things which we call animate and those things which we call inanimate? So what is life? We can feel it. We can feel it in ourselves. We can feel it in others. We can feel it in the members of the animal kingdom and in leaves and roots. When we think about people or animals or even plants, we have a sense that there is a sort of vital force and an energy about them that makes them alive. What is it? I think to answer the question, we have to go back. We have to go back into the past and when life first began. What exactly happened that changed the non-living into the living? The current theories of science tell us that in ancient times, there were pools of organic matter, swirling chemical reactions fused together in such a way that they create a cell. And what was special about that cell is that it could make more of itself. It could reproduce. So where there was one cell, then there was two cells with four and more cells. And those evolved and changed and became different and eventually became all the living things we see around us. So what life is actually is a type of chemical reaction that can create more of itself, and the more of itself is the key part here. You can have a sort of chain reaction where one reaction leads to another, but this reaction actually recreates a version of itself. It self-replicates. It has a pattern, a sort of cellular pattern that it holds, and that pattern is, in essence, a self-perpetuating pattern. So this is life. Life is a configuration of matter that has the ability to reproduce itself via a series of very complicated chemical reactions. I am a pattern that is human, and I can recreate a quite similar pattern through reproduction. So that makes me alive. So we then have to think about what was the difference then between that sort of self-replicating chemical chain reaction and the other chemical reactions that were going on around it. What was the difference between that cell that was created and all those sort of swirling masses of near cells that never were able to reproduce? The difference is, in fact, well, hugely important, very small. It's really just how certain molecules and certain particles are configured within it in this swirling mass of stuff. Something fell into the right position. An electron clicked in the right way, and then there was life. Life began. Well, this is fascinating. I think it's also, on some level, very disturbing, because what is the difference between us and inert matter? What's the difference between me and a stone, between a bird and water? It's really just how the particles within me are configured. So does this mean then that the sense of the wondrousness of life, of the vital force that animates me, that is an illusion, that we've discovered that really we are nothing more than chemical reactions devoid of any living force or vitality that makes us any different from any of the rest of the universe? Are we, in essence, just matter that happens to move and recreate itself? Are we essentially soulless? That's one way of looking at it, but I think to say that disregards our fundamental intuition about life, about ourselves, about each other. We know, we can feel, we intuit that there is some sort of vitality about us, a force of living that exists within you and within me and within all the other living beings. And to disregard that intuition, I believe, is leaving out a key piece of the puzzle. So if really the difference between us and so-called inert matter is just configuration, maybe then that living spirit exists within all things. By moving into the right pattern for self-replication, for action, for motion, living beings have unlocked a way of harnessing that living energy, that innate property of all matter that is life, vitality. Everything that is matter has its own spirit, has its own living force that courses through it. All things are alive. The rocks are alive. The water is alive. If you took me and reconfigured all my subatomic particles, you could make me into a rock. You could take me into air. You could make me into lots of things. And then you could remake me into myself. And I am alive. You can see, just looking at me, looking at anyone, that there is a life force that animates us. So since nothing is really added or subtracted, just moved around when you make me into a rock or a rock into me, that life force that's present in me must also be present in the rock. Therefore, the rock is in its own rockish way alive. The difference between patterns of matter that self-replicate and patterns of matter that don't is just that. There's no life that exists in one, it exists in all things. There is a universal property of all matter, and that is vitality. Everything in its own way is alive. We live in a universe of life, a universe wherein all matter is animated by some force, by some power that, when it is harnessed in a way such that it can self-replicate, it becomes what we have been calling life. So while we can go on to call patterns that reproduce themselves life, and patterns which do not life, we must remember that the difference between them is merely that difference, that the spirit, the vitality that we sense in living things is present in all things. If we mean life to be possessed of a sort of vital energy, of a spirit, then everything is alive. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.